Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. This is Daniel Torres here, and I am accompanied by my Greek co-host, Christina Nicolaou, or as they say there, Christina Nicolaou. How are you, Christina?
Christina, with a H, it's in
Christina,
Greek.
right?
Yeah, well, I'll teach you. I'm very well, Daniel, very excited about the weekend.
Yeah, I probably do it too much like the Spanish one, no? So, like do the like, instead of ha.
Little bit.
I guess that's what I do wrong. A little bird tells me that this weekend you have quite exciting plans. You're coming here to Barcelona for Shop Talk Europe, right?
Exactly. So my highlight is seeing you, of course, but also all the conference and the amazing things that we have planned as the FMCG Guys as well.
Oh yeah, we have to remember also our co-host Ephraim that we'll also see. He's coming in late, unfortunately. He'll miss our top-notch kickoff party on the Sunday, but anyway, I'm sure he'll make up for it later.
I'm sure he will.
So at Shop Talk, but also in this podcast, one topic that I think is gaining a lot of prominence in the last, I would say, year or so has been the marketing function. I mean, marketing has kind of always been the heart of FMCG, no? I would say.
It has. Building brands and serving consumers.
Why do you feel like me that like there's been a shift towards like a lot of more attention towards marketing now more than in the last 10 years, like since you and me started working?
Well, reflecting also on the conversation we had at Candid Commerce in London, right? There was actually my panel also on that front. I guess like there's a lot more concentration around the questions on the role of marketing, because I feel in the past perhaps it was a bit more established. Then during COVID, we saw like a big shift behind performance marketing and D2C and go full on the digital metrics. And now we feel like this was more of like a moment. And now people are trying to figure out what is really, again, the role of marketing. What are we all here to do? So I feel like I've been in quite a few interesting conversations about storytelling and brand marketing and having the consumer at the center, while at the same time making the best use of all these tools and the incredible retail media, like in store as well as online, and the performance marketing tools that are available. So for sure, it is, I wouldn't say a period where it's suddenly marketing is at the center. I think it has always been. It's just now people have more questions as they're trying to figure out things they thought they knew, and then they had to redefine.
No, it's a fascinating dynamic. And I'm glad that we have our guest, Claudia Calori here, VP, Head of Global Marketing for Personal Health at Philips. How are you, Claudia?
I am very good. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you, Christina. Very excited, or shall I say, Christina? I'm very excited to be here with you guys. You're doing an amazing job with this podcast, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And you're doing an amazing job at saying Christina's name much better than me. First time round already. So, Claudia, it would be great to understand before you got to Philips, what was your career background? How did you end up in FMCG, and how have you built your career?
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for the question. It actually gives me a good opportunity to reflect on the fact that I am a marketeer by chance, not by design. And let me tell you a little bit about it. When I was in high school, or when I was younger, my aspiration was not to be a marketeer. I didn't even know what marketing was in the days. I was aspiring to become a journalist. So I'm always been very much attracted by the art of storytelling, the ability to tell a story that can touch people's hearts and minds, and as well how storytelling is very much linked to persuasion. So how we can help with the story to get people to see and perceive the world in a different way. And that was my calling, I thought. So I went to university. I graduated in communications. And, by serendipity, when I was a student at university, as I was traveling back home from the city where I was studying, I bought a newspaper, an Italian newspaper. And on Friday, they had a special job insert. And on one of these editions, they had a call to students. Different companies were offering internships to students. And I found myself asking, well, why not? Let's apply. There were like a series of different companies, one of which was Procter & Gamble. I filled in the form not online. So this betrays, it was like the
analog.
Before 2K. It was 1999. I filled in the form, I mailed it. And after some months, I was basically called back. I went through quite a thorough process in terms of interviews. And then I was offered an internship. And by the time I was recruited by P&G, and I started my career in marketing. So that's how it started. I actually, thanks to that first encounter with a company, that first encounter with the broader corporate world, I actually started to understand what marketing is. And eventually I found myself fascinated by it.
You couldn't get out of it once you were in there.
I got a taste of that, and I couldn't get out of that. And it was actually quite a revelation for me, because I really did appreciate the creative part. So the right brain, if you want, side of that, the creativity, the strength of the idea, all the work that you do as well with agency partners, but like as well the left side of that, the business building, the analytical part, the more structured part of that. And I loved it. I loved the fact that you could have both, and you could make a living out of that, that you could use that to also create a positive impact in general at large in the world. So yes, that was that moment of sliding doors in which, I made that choice, and I started my career in Procter & Gamble in Rome. I spent eventually 10 years in P&G. I started in Rome, and then I moved to Geneva after 3 years. And after a decade, which sounds really quite a long time in P&G, I was recruited by Heineken here in the Netherlands. So fast forward to 2012, and I joined here Heineken in Amsterdam, where Heineken has its headquarters. I had the privilege of working as well for global brands within Heineken. I worked for the portfolio, indeed, of global brands of Heineken when Heineken, the company, was looking at premiumizing its international portfolio on top of the vast array of local brands that they have. And after that experience, I moved to Nike, working on Converse, still here in the Netherlands, where Nike has their international, actually their European headquarters. Completely different industry, completely different consumer and target audience.
And if I can add to that, completely different company culture as well. I mean, I've been to the Nike campus in Hilversum, and I remember I went there, probably around the time you were there, 2015, 2016. And at that time, first of all, everybody was going to the office, and secondly, everybody was wearing suits. But then you went to the Nike campus, and it looked like adults wearing high school clothes. It was very different, and the Nike culture is also very peculiar, very relationship driven, and so on.
100%. So I remember when I went for the first time to the Hilversum campus for interviews, and I was like waiting, and you have that massive entrance which has that view on the track and field part, and there were Nike employees that were practicing sports as part of the regular day. Some of them were running, some of them were doing something a little bit more elaborate, and I was asking myself, would that be part of the interview as well? So,
hopefully it was not.
Hopefully it was not. But I came to appreciate indeed how the culture as well of, rightly so, sports and movement was very embedded into the daily life that we had, and that still people have in Hilversum. And indeed, it feels a long time ago where, to your point, we would go to campus every single day. And then in 2019, I was recruited by Philips, which is still the company I'm lucky to work for today.
But you have really, of course, you started as a journalist, but you're very much an FMCG kid, if I may say, but very different companies and very different categories. So marketing is marketing, but I'm sure you've had different experiences I'm very keen to find out, what were your learnings from different categories and companies in the space?
Yes, first of all, thank you for the kid. I appreciate that, and I do recognize that statement. I completely see myself as a child of that mindset, if you want, of that school. But I've been very lucky because I've been working across different categories and also working on different geographies. And if I look back also, the very different cultures, to Daniel's point before. So if I take a step back, I had my internship, as I said, betraying my age, I had my internship in the year 2000, from 2000 to 2001. And then I started officially working with a contract in 2002. So in the past 25 years, I've seen as well marketing, to your point, Christina, through the lens of different companies and categories, but also the evolution of the discipline itself across, the past quarter of a century, which has been incredibly eventful for us as marketeers. So if I take a step back and I look at that personally, from a company standpoint, what I retain from these experiences, if I need to say a word for each company, I would tell you P&G, the method. That's really paramount. The ability to systematize brand building and to teach it, systematize it so that you can train people on that, especially as you are a fresh from university, first job stage of your life. You are really spongy about methods, somebody who is teaching you how to work. And that, again, is something that, as you talk to other P&G alumni, you will 100% recognize as a common thread. There is a formative element there that I do see on myself and that I found incredibly valuable moving forward in my career. A word for Heineken is entrepreneurship. So Heineken has a beautiful history as an original Dutch company and brand. It's still a family company, even if it is public, but still the family is the biggest investor in the company. The name of the company, the name of the bigger brand perspires, if you want, or radiates this original ethos of the founder of, discovering new territories, expanding, and as well the very commercial DNA that made Heineken what it is today. A word for Nike, that would be ambition. And I feel it's back to the comment that you were making, Daniel. That was something that is also very palpable if you happen to be in any of the Nike's offices around the world. I was very lucky to see as well the mothership in Portland in the US. And that's extraordinary, the sense of what one can do.
Yeah.
Genuinely, that drive, that optimism as well is really something that has an impact on you as an employee and as an individual. And a last word for Philips, which is, as I said, my current employer, I would say is purpose. Philips has transformed multiple times throughout its 134 years of history to adapt to changing conditions of the market and emerging opportunities. But eventually, there's a constant purpose of bringing meaningful innovation to improve people's lives has remained the constant, which I really appreciate, again, as a human being and as an employee.
Yeah, actually, on the purpose point of Philips, I recommend that people re-listen to the episode we did with Marlies Gewetsberger, the GM of Western Europe, where we really went into that. Super fascinating. I think that Philips is a brand that everybody knows, but when you dig into the purpose and actually the impact really of the brand, it's really interesting. But we're here today to talk more about marketing. So I'm going to put it to you like this, Claudia, very directly. Are you an old style marketer or a new style marketer?
I love this question, Daniel. And the way I would like to answer that is, I guess I would be an old dog, new tricks kind of person. So and I find like it's also interesting because I believe that we marketeers love to have sometimes provocation or very binary, dichotomic definition. Are you A or are you B? Are you black or are you white? And I do believe that there is a space for both if you want, but again, I might not be completely objective here. I think that if we defined all style marketing as brand building, if you will, so the classic theory of how you build a brand, how do you understand, how you start from your audience, how do you craft an insight, and so on and so forth. There is still a lot of value in that today. And it's something that in my position at Philips, I completely encourage and foster in the marketeers that we have in personal health. So the ability to really master the fundamentals of brand building is something that rather than old or new style, I would say is evergreen. At the same time, if we think about how the discipline has evolved in the past years, you also need to be incredibly not just aware, but proactive on what are the tools, what are the competencies, what are the skills that you need to develop in order to be able to connect significantly, relevantly, meaningfully with the people that you want to serve. And whilst I believe that, as Christina was saying at the very beginning, we need to get out of the dichotomy of performance marketing versus the brand marketing, you also need to recognize that you need both. And you also need to recognize that it's continuously changing and evolving. So your job as a marketeer is never quite done, because the essence of your job as a marketeer, the true essence, is to understand people. And we evolve. Our society evolves, sometimes progressively, sometimes a little less progressively, not always in a linear way. But of course, the resources we have, the issues we deal with, the society, the broader conditions we deal with change. As a marketeer, my first task is to understand that. And then I can apply my toolbox of brand building. Then I can apply my good fundamentals. Mm-hmm. But I cannot choose between the two. I would be, blind from one eye to a certain extent.
And how have you experienced, like, you've been around for a minute in the marketing world, and as you say, people change and marketing should be changing, alongside in order to be able to cater to them. Do you have any changes that you have observed and you can say okay, this is different versus what it was when I started?
Well, that's absolutely a fantastic question, because it really helps you to take that helicopter view. When I started, which was 2002, social media was not a thing. So, I'm not gonna dwell on it's good, it's bad, and so on, but just the way that as an assistant brand manager, I would plan my media plan. I would brief my agency back in the days to for a campaign or for the fiscal year is completely different. Mm-hmm. However, the objective, probably, if I had to rewrite that brief today, would not be that different. So the biggest change, if you wanted to, for us as marketeers as a discipline, is first and foremost, hardware-wise, we got the birth of smartphones. And then software-wise, if you want, we had the birth of social media. Bring the two together, it means that your audience is ever connected, which is, once again, the dream of a marketeer, because you can reach them whenever, wherever, but as well the challenge. How do you make sure that you can command, gain, earn their attention vis-a-vis actually directing it in a more linear way, as we used to do? And I think that for sure, right? That's the moment, existential moment, if you want, in the discipline that has defined also how we marketeers are dealing with that. I do remember very clearly when I was still in P&G, and it was 2008. We organized in Geneva a digital night. So I was an assistant brand manager, and I was already a brand manager at the time, but we invited the marketing directors, the GMs, and so on and so forth to discover digital. And it was absolutely a fun night, but also to ensure that the senior leaders were actually coming to terms with the fact that this wasn't just a fad, that the way people were engaging with each other, the way people were consuming information, we didn't call it content quite yet, was completely changing. And we had this exercise, each and everybody had to record a video for Pampers, for UNICEF, and then to collect some money. So how to turn it into action, et cetera, et cetera. And that was a moment of, oh, things are really changing. So that was one. Another, for me, very important moment that has happened in the past years that has really redefined the definition of marketing for the marketing practitioners is maybe a little less, how can I say, well-known. But I think we should not underestimate the impact that it had. And what I'm referring to is that in 2010, the first edition of How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp was published. Yeah. And you can, how can I say, adhere to that school of thought or not. You can agree with Sharp or not. That's not the point for me. What I found incredibly interesting is that for the first time, marketing was rephrased from a discipline for adepts, if you want, or very much perceived as equal to advertising, so something very creative, something very right brain. For the first time, the marketing was repositioned as something more scientific, something you could apply some numbers too, something that non-marketeers could relate to. And for me, again, the positive PR that publication has done for marketing as a discipline is quite significant, because and still today you have the sharpist or the not sharpist, but the fact that you are thinking about how to measure effectiveness, like the language that he introduced, has helped to debunk a lot of myths about the discipline.
And whether you agree or not, ultimately, at least in the big companies I've worked with, you will have these elements, as you say, in the vocabulary even, right? You will speak about the mental availability and the physical availability of the brand.
Yeah, you go.
You will
exactly.
be working at the household panel data to see like, how's my penetration going versus like frequency and volume per trip and so on. So it's very much grounded to that level of, if you want, the scientific flair that came with the book and has anchored people. Very right.
And I would like to know, like, because when I read marketing, brand building, etc., it's hard to know unless you're in a company, like what actually the marketing department is doing and what then like the agency is doing. Can you tell me about like that dynamic, how it works behind the scenes?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I will get back to the question that you were already asking, which is how is it in the different companies that I've seen, if you want, in first person, but like as well in other experiences of friends and ex-colleagues. And there isn't one formula. So in every single company that I work for, what marketing does is slightly different in terms of competencies or like in terms of scope as in other companies, as compared to other companies. And I can definitely elaborate on what we do in Philips in personal health specifically. But I would say that the first thing to consider as a marketeer is, first of all, what do you want to foster as core competencies that you want to retain eventually, as well as part of what is the value and development that you give back to your employees, in this case, to your marketeers. So, and it kind of also connects back to what is the role of marketing in the broader organization. Is marketing something that comes as if you want, as an afterthought, or as a function that deals with something that is designed and planned by other parts of the organization, or is marketing central to even the strategy of an organization? And once again, I'm very biased. I do believe that the more a company is consumer-centric or people-centric, the more a company will be truly successful. And it doesn't have to be, how can I say, it's not a credo in marketing per se, but it's more the mindset and the business model of truly looking at what are the needs of who you are serving, how you can not just fulfill that, anticipate that, and how you constantly re-challenge yourself to keep yourself relevant to that. So that's if you want, like a big difference. And if I take, for instance, the example of Nike, right? In Nike, marketing has a critical role in the organization, and a lot of activities are very much in the core and DNA of the company. So brand design, for instance, design per se, product design and brand design is absolutely a core value of the company. And therefore, a lot of activities that in other companies you might outsource are actually internally sourced. Mm-hmm. If I come to my current company, to my team, and to our remit in personal health, very concretely and very openly, what we do internally is, first of all the activities that are transforming first of all, an understanding of consumer needs, current and future, into insights that can help us to generate new solutions that can be new products, but also new business models or new concepts. It doesn't matter. Philips has a strong innovation DNA, so there is a strong skew to think about a concrete solution. But as well, it's fascinating to see how a company can evolve as well to think beyond the materiality, if you will, of a solution, as long as it carries value. So it can also be a new business model. I know that my friend Marlies talked extensively about the Better Than New program that we have, which is how we propose to people refurbished products. So technically, the innovation is not the product per se, but how it's brought back to life. And it's better than new because it's better for the environment and better from a cost standpoint. Being refurbished doesn't cost as much as the fully new product. So everything that has to do with the consumer, with the audience that we serve in terms of understanding, and what are the explicit or implicit needs, the problems to solve, the barriers that they have, like the real lives. Really understanding that, like, is something that is absolutely in-house, absolutely fundamental. We have a top-notch team that is in charge of consumer insights. We have a very strong community of practice that brings as well the consumer insights leaders of the different regions together to exchange best practices, to push each other, to use new technology, to gain more data, or like actually to harness more from the data we have. So that's like definitely something that I will never outsource in terms of competence. The second competence, or like the second activity, if you will, that I'm very keen to continue to have and foster in-house is the strategic thinking that enables our marketeers to transform business objectives into marketing objectives, which means, of course, you are a business. So your objective is to have a healthy, sustainable business that grows in line with your projection, in line with your strategic plan. But eventually, as per point one, at the heart of growing a business, there is somebody who decides to choose you. Mm-hmm. And especially in our category, which is durable, that moment of truth, that choice is critical because they're going to stay with you for quite a long time. This is, again, less fast-moving than fast-moving. There is an element as well of and also the responsibility, if you will, of the presence that we have in-house. The presence that we have actually in the houses of people, because our devices are there to stay. So the ability for us as well to ensure that we are very, I'm going to use the word obsessed in the best possible sense, by understanding what makes people tick, like what is the behavioral change that we need to instigate, that like what is the angle, like it's like an oyster, right? Like what is the right angle, like in order to open it, that can actually give that spark, that can nudge people towards better self-care behaviors. So this is something, and again, like this is a skill that it's teachable. The more you practice, the better you are at it. But that's something that I would never outsource. Now, mm-hmm. Watch out, because the temptation of outsourcing is always there. So the ability for us as a marketing function and as a team to be very clear on our strategy and to be very sharp on our objectives will also imply and impact the ability to work at best with any kind of partner. Delegating this kind of thinking is absolutely possible. However, it will come at the expenses of the sustainable growth of whatever your business. And I'm very, as I said, like obsessed, but I'm very clear on this, because once again, delegating those kind of choices is very tempting, and sometimes it's much easier. So that's like definitely something that we have in-house. We, of course, like are, as I said, an innovation-driven company. So product marketing, so like the broad remit of product marketing is definitely something that we have in-house. It's very proprietary. Our marketeers, especially our marketeers in the first part, like if you want, of proposition development, are very keen and very versed into product marketing. And of course, like the ability for them to have both, to have that ability to understand product, but like as well always with the consumer in mind, is something that makes them strong marketeers. Similarly, in our regions, in our markets, the regional marketeers, the market marketeers need to balance both. They are there where the everything happens. They're like on the front line, so they have access to the real last mile. That proximity is gold. The ability to master that, to harness those insights, harness those data, harness like as well the data that come from our retailers, for instance, and combine them to connect significantly with consumers, like is super critical. I will tell you then, like another thing that we do in-house is our own platforms. So we do have Philips.com as our e-commerce flagship platform, and as well our own the relationship that we build with CRM and with customer care. Something that we didn't do that has been fashionable in the industry, and I hear on the street that is getting less fashionable, is having an in-house agency. And that's also something, right, where I believe that the jury has been out for a while. We opted for a hybrid model. So there are some capabilities that we do have and we do maintain in-house. We have a production studio in-house. We have a strong expertise into asset production. Also because, as you might imagine, there is a very strong dependency with our products and proposition. So back to core competencies, there is an element of proprietary IP that we want to continue to preserve with bringing to life, for instance, the designs of our products. But we don't want to have the full creative effort in-house. I don't think that, at least like in my experience, that's not a core competence for us. So we'd rather work with talented partners.
Listening to you, Claudia, I feel like essentially the decision to outsource something is more about the knowledge management strategy that the company should have about what is the knowledge that they need to keep and foster in-house. But from my experience working with agencies on different levels, sometimes like to do an event or help with some POS materials, to actually be our partners that we work with every day. What I would really like to hear your perspective on is, how do you build a very successful team when you have to build the team both internally but externally also to have the right talent?
Fantastic question, right? And I wish I had the formula. I do believe that there is one common element that defines successful internal teams and successful internal and external teams. And that red thread for me is trust. Trust also implies a certain continuity of the relationship. So what I found important when building internal teams, independently from if you are hiring from within or like if you are hiring from outside, is to ensure that you have the right capabilities and as well the right how can I say, understanding that on that basis of reciprocal confidence in each other's capabilities, there is a level of autonomy and there is a level of safety. The level of autonomy is the ability for each and of us to be able to give their best without necessarily being overly supervised. And at the same time, the level of safety to be able to experiment and sometimes just get things wrong without being afraid of being too much reprimanded about that. And if I apply that to the external partners, specifically to your example, Christina, with external agencies at whatever level, like it can be creative agencies, it can be event agencies, partners for internal events, it's really trust and the ability to have each other's back, because you know that the relationship is for the long term. And I do see that and sometimes we forget about how important it is. The partnership is really tested in the bad moments. But the bad moments are the ones that really forge the partnerships. Because the way you react, the way you can have each other back in the bad moments is the testament of how strong is the trust and the confidence in each other's capabilities to get out of this. And paradoxically, the moments of crisis, the moments of difficulties get you out of that as a stronger team.
Great. And marketing-wise, there's been like this big surge that we've covered widely on this podcast, which has been retail media, which initially seemed to be like a commercial thing, e-commerce, because it was like, retailer, brand relationship. Now, from what I'm seeing more and more is that at least from the retail media network's point of view, they want to speak more and more like with people like you, Claudia, with the people that have the marketing budget. How are you seeing this evolution of retail media? Do you see it as like a valid channel? And are you also getting more phone calls from the retail media networks to get your budget?
Of course. I know, Daniel, jokes aside, I think like it is a super important evolution of our media landscape over the past years, and it will continue to evolve. I feel like we had 3 waves of a big change in media. First, it was search. Then, as we said before, it was social. And now we're having retail media that is taking a more and more important share of media spend. And it's quite interesting, right? Because there are still a lot of prejudices, if you want, on what retail media eventually is and where it works. Is it upper funnel? Is it lower funnel? Is it strategic? Is it tactical? Is it good for you? Is it bad for you? Is it long term? Is it short term? You name it. What I find like most important is that, and I talk like as well directly related to my own experience with personal health now. Basically, your retailers have access directly to shoppers, to people. And the way they can as well connect with people is incredibly valuable for you as a brand. The data that you can leverage together with retail media, but like also the precision that you can get. It's the dream of a media person, because it is finally a closed loop without any debate about attribution. So you can actually have the data, use the data and see if that worked and how much it worked. So I do think that if we look at this as with this lens, we get out like a little bit of out of the debate about is it what kind of like a part of the funnel it is. But back to the previous reflection, right? You also need to see where you want to play with it within like your broader media strategy. So eventually, how do you want to use retail media like in the best possible way? And as well, making sure that it makes sense, like that you continue to have it to leverage the opportunities that getting directly on the needs and on the habits of the shoppers fit with the rest of your strategy. So yes, I'm getting those scores. Funnily enough, like I was yesterday night, I got targeted by an ad by bol.com, which is like, if you happen to see that, maybe you have, it's quite funny, right? Like it's portraying a marketeer, which is crowdsurfing. And like the subtitles are like, this is Thijs, he's a marketing manager, he's very happy because investing on retail media on bol.com helping to drive his desire. So the way they position it like feels like really let us get ahead of a prejudice that this is just about conversion and lower funnel, which is true.
Yeah. Our friends from Ahold Delhaize did come to the podcast with one of their retail media leaders a while ago. I don't know if like 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago even, but it's one of the most downloaded podcasts we've had. So there you go. So Claudia, this wouldn't be an FMCG Guys podcast without our famous, very famous last question, which is if you went back to yourself as you were starting your career and you had to give yourself one piece of advice, and it can only be one, what would that be?
The one piece of advice I would give to my younger self and to anybody in the marketing realm today is think big. Think big, otherwise somebody else is going to do that for you.
This was Claudia Calori, Vice President, Head of Global Marketing Personal Health at Philips. Well, Christina, what a marketing masterclass, eh?
Indeed, a marketing masterclass, Daniel. Very well put. A lot of experience in one person.
And a lot of knowledge as well. So interesting that she didn't want to be a marketer.
A marketeer by chance, not by design, as you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. So what are your key takeaways from this chat?
Oh, a lot of takeaways. But first of all, let me say that it was a very interesting kind of like retrospective on kind of like taking this one step back and looking at the different companies he's worked in and what are kind of like the overarching themes. So I felt like from my limited experience or more with some of them, she was spot on by saying like P&G, it's all about like this method they have, which is paramount on how they put a system behind brand building and they recruit from universities and teach it. Then on Heineken, it was very interesting to hear that the first word that comes to her mind is entrepreneurship and how kind of like the ethos of the founder with this commercial DNA merges into what the company is.
Yeah.
Nike ambition, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Very much just do it.
Yeah.
Or just what can one person do?
I have to put a thing in there. With the current status of Nike, I'd be interested to know if the Nike she lived then is the same now. Actually, let me do a shout out. If anyone from Nike wants to come to the show, they're more than welcome to. We haven't had anyone yet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Also, the Nike like 3 years ago. So a very big transition, I guess, in the past years.
Yeah.
And then Philips, I wasn't surprised once it said purpose. Like from our chat with Marlies as well, it was very much the kind of like aftertaste I had on what is the culture of Philips and what they do.
Yeah, I remember when we talked about it later that we talked about this aspect. That was interesting. I thought it was interesting how she perceived herself like having like the key fundamentals of brand building, which are evergreen, as she said, but also like taking on new marketing techniques, and she called herself an old dog with new tricks.
Yeah, absolutely. She was very spot on when she said marketing is about people, because we have the consumer at the center. What is the consumer? It's people. We shouldn't forget that people is the society. As people in the society evolve, so marketing needs to evolve. Like that's unavoidable in a way. But it does not mean that there is not a lot of value in some of the well-established kind of like methods, if you want, connect to the P&C of the past. And there are some elements on the way that we communicate, like as I was mentioning with regards to how smartphones and social media have changed our lives. But on the other hand, there are some key elements on human values that will remain a constant.
Totally. No, and I think that's why I think that having this more humanities studies and understanding that will be more and more more valuable, let's say, because it's like reading the people and so on. It's very important. And I think that I'll definitely re-listen to this podcast probably a few times, because I think she gave a super detailed explanation on how companies operate marketing internally, why they work with agencies, why they don't. And it's super I didn't realize it was so. I would have thought it was more tactical, but super strategic and structural to the company.
It is, and I feel like she answered a lot of the questions a lot of people have, but have never had the chance to ask. So when you're working in sales or in other departments, even in marketing sometimes, and you cannot really get why do all these strange people who are not part of my company come and get involved in my work directly or indirectly. And the answer is there is not one formula on how you do it, right? But you have to be very purposeful on the things that you want to keep as competencies for the future.
Yeah.
Similarly to other conversations we've had, I remember the RGM conversation on the things that you want to build as capabilities in your people versus the things that you want to develop as data automated analytics.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you, Christina. Look forward to seeing you very soon here in Barcelona. Excited about that, I have to say.
Super excited. We're going to have a blast and very much looking forward to seeing all the people that listen to our podcast and will be joining us there.
Exactly. So by the time this goes out, we will have seen you also. It was great to see you in Barcelona. We had a blast. See you in the next episode of the FMCG, guys. Have a great one. Bye-bye.